The tires of the old pickup truck crunched against the gravel as Elena Voss and Caleb Hart pulled up to their new home. The vineyard stretched before them, a sea of gnarled vines tangled in the late autumn mist. The Pacific Northwest air was sharp, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine from the surrounding forest. The manor house loomed at the edge of the property, its faded clapboard siding sagging under the weight of neglect. Beyond it, a greenhouse glinted dully, its glass panes streaked with grime and cracked in places. Elena's heart fluttered with a mix of excitement and unease. This was their fresh start, their dream of building a winery from the ground up. But something about the place felt heavy. "Looks like it's been waiting for us," Caleb said, his voice warm as he squeezed her hand. His carpenter's hands were rough, steady, a contrast to Elena's trembling fingers. She forced a smile, pushing down the knot in her stomach. They spent the day unloading boxes, the manor's creaky floors groaning under their steps. The house was a fixer-upper, with peeling wallpaper and a fireplace choked with ash. But Elena saw potential in its high ceilings and wide windows overlooking the valley. Caleb was already sketching plans to restore the oak banister, his practicality grounding her flights of fancy. By afternoon, they ventured to the greenhouse, a relic of the vineyard's past glory. Inside, the air was cool and thick with the smell of moss. Vines had crept through broken panes, curling around rusted shelves. Elena traced her finger over a faint symbol scratched into the glass. A circle with jagged lines radiating outward, like a sun with broken rays. "Probably just kids messing around," Caleb said, noticing her frown. He kicked at a pile of dead leaves, revealing a cracked terracotta pot. "This place has been empty for years." Elena nodded, but the symbol nagged at her. It didn't look random. It looked deliberate, like a warning carved into the skin of the greenhouse. She shook off the thought and followed Caleb back to the house, the fog thickening as the sun dipped below the hills. That night, they collapsed onto a mattress in the living room, too tired to unpack their bed frame. The manor was quiet, save for the occasional creak of settling wood. Elena drifted into a restless sleep, dreaming of twisting vines and a low, rhythmic hum. She woke with a start, her breath catching. The hum wasn't a dream. It was real. Faint but unmistakable, drifting from the direction of the greenhouse. She sat up, heart pounding, and glanced at Caleb. He was fast asleep, his chest rising and falling steadily. Slipping on her boots, Elena grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The fog was impenetrable, swallowing the vineyard in a gray shroud. The hum grew louder as she approached the greenhouse, a soft, almost human whisper weaving through it. "Hello?" she called, her voice trembling. The whisper stopped. She swept the flashlight across the glass walls, but the beam caught only her own reflection, pale and wide-eyed. Nothing else. No movement, no sound, just the oppressive silence of the fog. Back in the house, she locked the door and crawled beside Caleb, telling herself it was just the wind. But as she closed her eyes, she heard it again. The whisper, clearer now, forming a single word. "Elena." She bolted upright, her pulse racing. Caleb stirred but didn't wake. She crept to the window, peering into the fog. There, at the edge of the vineyard, stood a figure, tall, shadowy, its outline barely discernible. She blinked and it was gone. Her breath fogged the glass as she stared, waiting for it to reappear. It didn't. Morning light brought no answers. Caleb was up early, brewing coffee in the cluttered kitchen. Elena told him about the whispers and the figure, her voice shaky. "It was probably a deer," he said, stirring sugar into his mug. "This place is creepy at night. You're just stressed." Elena wanted to argue, but his calm certainty made her doubt herself. Maybe it was her imagination, fueled by the move and the eerie quiet of the countryside. As they stepped outside to start the day's work, something caught her eye on the porch steps. A small, carved wooden vine leaf, its edges worn but intricately detailed. She picked it up, her fingers tingling. "Caleb, did you leave this here?" He frowned, shaking his head. Never seen it before. Elena clutched the leaf, her eyes scanning the vineyard. The fog had lifted, but the unease hadn't. Somewhere out there, something was watching. And it knew her name. The carved vine leaf sat on the kitchen counter, its dark wood catching the morning light. Elena couldn't stop glancing at it as she washed dishes, the suds swirling in the sink like the fog that clung to the vineyard each night. Caleb was outside, hammering at a sagging porch rail, his work boots leaving muddy prints on the steps. The normalcy of his routine should have grounded her, but the leaf and the whispers from the greenhouse gnawed at her thoughts. She'd heard her name, clear as a bell in the dead of night. That wasn't her imagination. It couldn't be. By noon, Elena decided to clear her head. She pulled on a jacket and wandered toward the vineyard's edge, where the rows of gnarled vines met the forest. The air was crisp, scented with pine and the faint rot of fallen leaves. As she walked, she noticed more of those strange symbols, circles with jagged rays, etched into the bark of an old oak. Her fingers traced the grooves, rough and deliberate. Whoever carved these wasn't just passing through. She snapped a photo with her phone, her stomach twisting. Back at the house, Caleb was unloading tools from the truck. "Find anything interesting out there?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Elena showed him the photo. "More of those symbols, like the one in the greenhouse. You don't think that's weird?" He squinted at the screen, then shrugged. "Old property, old marks. Probably some kid with a pocket knife years ago." "You're reading too much into it, El." His dismissal stung. She wanted to argue, to make him see the unease that prickled her skin, but she bit her tongue. Instead, she headed to the greenhouse, determined to find answers. The glass structure loomed larger in daylight, its cracked panes glinting like broken teeth. Inside, the air was damp, heavy with the scent of earth and decay. She scanned the shelves, finding nothing but rusted tools and shattered pots, until her foot caught on something hard. Buried under a pile of leaves was another carved vine leaf, identical to the one on the porch. Her breath hitched as she tucked it into her pocket. That afternoon, a battered Jeep rolled up the gravel drive. A woman stepped out, her gray hair tied in a loose bun, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You must be Elena," she called, striding toward the porch. "I'm Mira Cole from the next valley over. Thought I'd welcome you to the hollow." Elena invited her in, grateful for company. Over coffee, Mira's warmth put her at ease, but her stories about the vineyard were anything but comforting. "This place belonged to Amos Reed, a vintner who poured his soul into these vines," Mira said, her voice low. "He was a recluse, obsessed with making the perfect wine. But the harvest failed in '92 and Amos, well, he vanished. Folks say he went mad, talking about a presence in the vineyard. Some nonsense about rituals to save his crops." "Rituals?" Elena's pulse quickened. "What kind?" Mira's eyes flicked to the vine leaf on the counter, and her expression tightened. "Old superstitions, carvings, offerings, that sort of thing. Never paid it much mind. But this land, it's got a way of holding on to its secrets." Elena wanted to press her, but Caleb walked in, breaking the moment. Mira left soon after, promising to stop by again. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay beside Caleb, listening to the wind rattle the manor's windows. Then it came again, the whisper, soft and insistent, drifting from the greenhouse. "Elena, come." She clutched the sheets, her heart pounding. Caleb didn't stir. The next morning, she found another carved leaf on the porch, and then another, tucked inside a toolbox Caleb had left outside. Tools started vanishing, only to reappear in odd places. Hammers in the vineyard, a saw blade under the kitchen sink. Caleb's frustration grew, his voice sharp when Elena mentioned the leaves. "You're letting this place get to you," he snapped, tossing a wrench into his toolbox. "It's just junk left behind. Stop looking for ghosts." But Elena couldn't stop. Her dreams were haunted now, filled with a man in the greenhouse, his face hidden in shadow, his hands stained with dark liquid. She woke each night drenched in sweat, the whispers echoing in her mind. Desperate for answers, she climbed to the manor's attic, a dusty maze of cobwebs and forgotten boxes. There, buried under a pile of moldy blankets, she found a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. The handwriting was spidery, frantic. Amos reads. She flipped through it, her eyes catching phrases. "The vines demand more than water. It watches me, always watching." The final entry sent a chill down her spine. "I've done what it asked, but it's not enough. The watcher will never leave." Elena closed the journal, her hands trembling. Outside, the fog rolled in, thicker than ever, swallowing the vineyard. She glanced toward the greenhouse, its silhouette barely visible. Something moved in the mist. A shadow, tall and still, watching her from the edge of the vines. The journal's brittle pages felt like secrets unfolding in Elena's hands as she sat cross-legged in the attic, dust motes dancing in the slanted light from a grimy window. Amos Reed's words painted a picture of obsession. A man convinced that the vineyard harbored something ancient, a watcher that demanded tribute for bountiful harvests. Entries spoke of carved offerings left in the greenhouse, of whispers guiding him through failed seasons. "It knows my name," one line read, mirroring Elena's own terror. Her skin crawled. Was this what she'd heard? Was the watcher real? Or had Amos's isolation driven him mad? She snapped the journal shut, her mind reeling. Downstairs, Caleb was tinkering with security cameras, his latest attempt to ease her fears. "These will catch any critters or trespassers," he said, mounting one on the porch. His tone was patient, but Elena saw the strain in his eyes, the way he avoided talking about the carved leaves or her nightmares. She wanted to show him the journal, to make him understand, but she knew he'd dismiss it as ramblings from a bygone era. That evening, Mira returned, her jeep kicking up gravel as the sun dipped low. She carried a basket of apples from her orchard, but her eyes sharpened when Elena mentioned the journal. Amos was no fool, Mira said, settling into a kitchen chair. He believed the land was cursed after a fire wiped out his family years before. Said the watcher rose from that tragedy, feeding on guilt and secrets. He tried rituals, carvings, blood offerings in the soil to appease it. "Blood?" Elena whispered, her coffee turning cold in her mug. Mira nodded. "Just rumors, but folks whispered about strange lights in the greenhouse at night." After he vanished, the vineyard went wild. "You're stirring it up by being here," Caleb overheard, stepping in from the porch. "That's enough ghost stories," he said firmly. "We're building a life, not chasing myths." Mira's gaze lingered on Elena before she left, a silent warning in her eyes. That night, Elena's dreams twisted darker. She saw the watcher in the fog, its form coalescing into a man with Amos's haunted eyes. reaching for her through the vines. She woke, gasping, the room shrouded in darkness. A glance at the window showed the fog thicker than ever, pressing against the glass like a living thing. The next day brought no relief. The security cameras glitched, screens flickering with static. Caleb cursed under his breath, resetting them. Elena ventured to the greenhouse, journal in hand, searching for clues. She matched Amos's sketches to the symbols on the glass. Protective wards, he called them, meant to keep the watcher at bay. Her fingers traced one, and for a moment the air hummed, vibrating like the whisper she'd heard. As dusk fell, the cameras captured something. Elena replayed the footage, her breath catching. A shadow flitted across the vineyard's edge, tall, humanoid, vanishing into the fog. "See? It's not just me," she said, showing Caleb. He paused the video, zooming in. "Could be a deer, or the wind moving branches. The resolution's crap in this mist." His doubt fueled her frustration. "Why won't you believe me? Something's out there." Caleb sighed, rubbing his temples. "I do believe you're scared, Elle. But we can't let paranoia ruin this. Let's focus on the winery." Elena stormed off, calling Mira. The historian arrived quickly, her face grave as they pored over the journal together. "These rituals. He thought he could bind the Watcher, but it backfired," Mira explained. "It started watching him, then his workers. Drove them away. Like their own unease," Elena thought. As night deepened, the whispers returned louder, pulling her toward the greenhouse. She resisted, but the pull was magnetic. Then a scream pierced the air. Not from her dreams, but real, echoing from the forest's edge. Elena and Caleb rushed outside, flashlights cutting through the fog. Nothing. No tracks. No sign. Just the oppressive silence. Back inside, Elena couldn't shake it. She glanced at the greenhouse from the window, its outline faint. The door stood ajar, swinging gently, though no wind stirred. Footprints, fresh, muddy, led from the vines straight to its threshold, disappearing inside. The footprints in the mud gleamed under Elena's flashlight beam, trailing into the greenhouse like a sinister invitation. She stood frozen on the porch, the journal clutched in her hand, its weight a reminder of Amos's warnings. Caleb joined her, his face etched with concern for the first time. "Those weren't there earlier," he muttered, scanning the fog-shrouded vineyard. The door creaked on its hinges, beckoning them inside. "We have to check it out," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. Caleb nodded reluctantly, grabbing a crowbar from his toolbox. They stepped into the greenhouse, the air thick and humid, carrying a faint metallic tang. The footprints, large, boot-like, led to a cluster of overgrown pots in the corner. Elena knelt, brushing aside vines, revealing more carvings etched into the floorboards, circles, rays, and now twisted figures that looked like people entangled in roots. "This is getting out of hand," Caleb said, his grip tightening on the crowbar. "Maybe we should call the sheriff." Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed. "Mira." "I'm coming over," the historian said without preamble. "Those footprints? They're a sign. The Watcher's drawing you in." Mira arrived minutes later, her eyes wide as she examined the carvings. "Amos described this in the journal. A hidden space where he performed his rituals." Together they cleared the debris, uncovering a trapdoor bolted shut with rusted locks. The footprints stopped right at its edge as if whatever made them had vanished into the wood. Elena flipped through the journal, her fingers flying over the pages. "Here. Amos writes about a family tragedy. His wife and child died in that fire, But he blamed himself, said the land was angry, that his ancestors had disturbed something ancient by planting the vines wrong. He started the rituals to atone, offering carvings and blood from the soil. Mira's face paled. The reeds weren't the first. This valley has old stories, indigenous warnings about spirits tied to the earth. Amos thought he could control it, but it consumed him. As they spoke, Elena felt a chill. She pulled out an old photo from her wallet, a faded snapshot of her grandparents on a farm. My family, they lived nearby in the next hollow. Gran used to talk about a vineyard that swallowed people whole. I thought it was just stories. Mira's eyes narrowed. That can't be coincidence. Maybe your bloodline's connected. The Watcher senses it. Caleb snorted, breaking the tension. This is ridiculous. Bloodlines, spirits. We're talking about a squatter or prankster, not some curse. He wedged the crowbar into the trapdoor's seam, testing it. Let's open this and prove it's nothing. Elena hesitated, the strain between them palpable. Caleb's skepticism had always been her anchor, but now it felt like a wall, pushing her away. What if it's more? What if ignoring it makes it worse? He paused, meeting her gaze. I love you, Elle, but we came here to build something real, not chase shadows. Mira stepped back as Caleb pried at the lock. The metal groaned, but held. Elena wandered to the greenhouse wall, staring at her reflection in a cracked pane. The fog outside blurred the edges, making her image waver. Then something shifted. In the glass, her reflection moved independently, its hand raising slowly, fingers curling as if to beckon. But Elena's own hand was still at her side. The reflected eyes darkened, staring back with an intensity that wasn't hers. A whisper echoed in her mind. Closer. She gasped, stumbling back. Did you see that? Caleb and Mira turned. See what? He asked, frowning. The reflection. It moved on its own. Elena's voice trembled. The pain was normal now, showing only her pale face. But the whisper lingered, a pull toward the trapdoor. Mira grabbed her arm. That's the Watcher. It's manifesting through you because of your connection to the land. Caleb shook his head, redoubling his efforts on the trapdoor. With a final heave, the lock snapped, wood splintering. The door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness, the air rising from below cold and musty, laced with the scent of earth and decay. Elena peered down, her flashlight beam swallowed by the void. At the bottom, faint shapes glinted, relics perhaps, or something worse. The whispers grew, urging her forward. The trapdoor yawned like a mouth into the abyss, the staircase descending into pitch black. Elena's flashlight beam sliced through the gloom, revealing uneven stone steps slick with moisture. The air wafting up was stale, laced with the sharp bite of decay and something metallic. Blood. She glanced back at Caleb and Mira, their faces pale in the dim light. I'm going down, she said, her voice echoing strangely. Caleb gripped her arm. Not alone. This could be dangerous, unstable, or worse. Mira nodded, clutching the journal. The answers are there, but so is the Watcher. Be careful. They descended together, the steps creaking underfoot. The chamber below was a cavernous room carved from the earth, walls lined with shelves of dusty jars and withered vines twisting like veins across the ceiling. In the center sat a crude altar, surrounded by more carvings, dozens of wooden vine leaves, some stained dark. Elena's breath caught as she approached, recognizing relics from Amos's rituals. A rusted knife, yellowed bones that looked animal, and a faded photograph pinned to the altar. She picked up the photo. her hands trembling. It showed a young woman with Elena's eyes standing beside Amos Reed. This is my grandmother," she whispered. The back was inscribed, "Alara and Amos, 1960, forgive me." Mira gasped, flipping through the journal. "Your family's secret. Amos wasn't just a neighbor. He was your grandmother's brother. The fire that killed his family started because of a dispute over the land. Your gran fled, changed her name, but the guilt, it bound him here." The pieces clicked. The Watcher wasn't a spirit of the land. It was Amos's manifestation, his unresolved guilt twisting into a presence that haunted the vineyard. And Elena, with her bloodline, had awakened it fully. The whispers weren't calls. They were pleas, distorted by decades of torment. A low hum filled the chamber, the air growing colder. Shadows shifted on the walls, coalescing into a figure. The Watcher, tall and spectral, its face flickering between Amos's haunted features and something darker. "You came," it rasped, voice like rustling leaves. "Blood calls to blood." Elena stepped forward, heart pounding. "You're Amos. This ends now. The rituals, the carvings, they trapped you here. Let it go." The figure wavered, pain etching its form. "Guilt, it feeds. Destroy it all or join me." She turned to the altar, grabbing the knife to smash the relics. But Caleb lunged suddenly, his eyes glazed, unfocused. "No," he snarled, voice not his own. "It must stay." The Vineyard's influence had seeped into him, twisting his skepticism into possession. He swung the crowbar, forcing Elena back. "Caleb, fight it," she cried, dodging as Mira hurled a jar at him, shattering it against the wall. He hesitated, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. What am I?" The Watcher loomed larger, feeding on the chaos. Elena seized the moment, sweeping the relics off the altar. She crushed the carved leaves underfoot, the wood splintering with unnatural cracks. The knife sliced through the photograph, severing the tie. A wail echoed through the chamber as the Watcher dissolved, shadows retreating like smoke. Caleb collapsed, gasping, the glaze fading from his eyes. I didn't mean." Elena helped him up, Mira supporting her. They fled the chamber, the trapdoor slamming shut behind them. Outside, the fog lifted abruptly, stars piercing the night sky. The vineyard seemed quieter, the vines less twisted. But as they drove away days later, selling the property unfinished, Elena felt a lingering pull. In her dreams, whispers echoed faintly. Not threats, but echoes. She wondered if the cycle was truly broken, or if the hollow's heart still beat, waiting for the next blood to call it home.